at our conference last April so much because I actually really, I mean, not to say that I don't learn a lot from other people's presentations.
You actually heard things you hadn't heard before.
But it was, well, the entirety of it was in a different direction. And I did feel, you know, and again, not to discredit anyone else in the research they're doing, but to be able to put, you know, to say these groups' names, and I mean, I was just on the SIC website, and I mean, I recommend anyone go to SAIC.com and look at their, what is it, their like portfolio video or their science to solutions video, and it's pretty, I mean, it's pretty crazy, like the kind of money that would be required to be behind a group like this, and what kind of stuff they're putting together.
Yeah, and if I suggest everybody read a story that said Washington's $8 billion shadow. It was a great article about SAIC. It was in Vanity Fair. And they said, the company that's from the movies, the one you think about with the evil CEO and they control everything and they could have anybody killed for any price, this is the kind of company that you're dealing with SAIC. And I think that's why you've got this cover-up right now where when people talk about directed energy weapons, suddenly it's, ooh, you're a disinfo agent. Well, why are you a disinfo agent when you talk about products that are openly available on their websites that their board of directors are bragging about? Why is it that this cannot enter into the dialogue of the political mainstream right now? That's the problem. Why is it that when people try to talk about private contractors, they're shut down? Why does it all have to be about Tex Mars found another 666 in a Dave Matthews Band album? I mean, it's just so far gone. And the stuff about Ed Brown and the income tax, we're trying to stop World War IV here. This is serious.
Now, let me ask you a specific question on the directed energy weapons as it pertains to 9/11, because I'm not clear on this. Do you believe that they used that specifically to bring down the two big buildings?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't think thermate is a feasible hypothesis. If you really believe in controlled demolition, I don't think thermate can nearly explain it. And I don't want to get into, you know, people who come from Los Alamos or whatever. I'm not trying to make it personal, but I do think, look at the chain of evidence that these supposed thermate samples come from. Number one, the first piece came from a woman who claims that she had access to a piece of steel that was part of a memorial that her husband was working on, I believe, and then sends this piece. Was the piece cut with thermate? Possibly. We don't know. Is this a legitimate piece? The chain of evidence is sketchy. Then you have this dime bag of dust that supposedly comes from a woman who's already a 9/11 truther who keeps it for 4 years for some reason, doesn't release it, and then gives it to Dr. Jones 4 years, 5 years later? The chain of evidence just doesn't work. When you look at the totality of the collapse, I think thermate is not a viable hypothesis to explain the totality. I don't know if it's directed energy weapons. I don't think it's thermate alone, and I think thermate has basically created a cult right now. See, here's the problem, guys. When you talk about directed energy weapons, only a few groups could make that happen. U.S. Space Command, for example, was running Apollo Guardian that day. Was that part of it? No one talks about Apollo Guardian. When you talk about directed energy weapons, you talk about Raytheon, SAIC, Future Combat Systems. You're talking about specific people. With thermate, it could have been anybody. I mean, Dr. Jones gets on and says, oh, you could buy this stuff on eBay. So it could have been anybody. Could have been Silverstein. Could have been Marvin Bush. Could have been Israel. Anybody. It doesn't, thermate doesn't, someone put it there. Doesn't mean the government did it. I just feel it's a dead end research-wise.
I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's a dead end research, because I think it's a part of it.
Maybe it is, but why does it have to be the only part? Why is it that?
No, absolutely not. I'm not saying it's the only part, but we're dealing with people who we're trying to convince them of something, or at least get them to look into these ideas that we're talking about, just about the Twin Towers even coming down in a different fashion, and so it's very hard.
Yeah, listen, I don't think that. I think controlled demolition has been basically beaten down by popular mechanics.
Right.
I don't mean that their evidence is good. I mean that in the minds of the average public people right now, you're talking about 80% of the public doesn't know who the vice president is. You're not dealing with an educated public. So they sit here, oh, I heard popular mechanics debunk that. I think as a lead point, that's not what we have to go with right now. That's why on my website, I'm far more interested in trying to stop the next one from happening by putting the focus on the people who could have made it happen. It's sort of you have to stay in the present while also looking backward. But, I look at these 9/11 truthers who just go around saying fire couldn't melt steel. Why is that the lead point that we always have to go with? There are so many other things. I think the drills and the war games that day get you to the very people. I don't know why we don't talk more about those. It's like 9/11 truth suddenly has to be about controlled demolition. And I think that strategy needs to change too. And it's not just that; it's the stuff about victims' families, ask questions, demand answers. What does that even mean? We've been asking questions for 6 years. Let's get to the research now.
Well, I don't know who they propose is going to credibly and honestly answer these questions in any level of authority. That's the thing I've always wondered with this ask questions.
Do investigation. Who's going to lead that? I mean, let's get realistic. They say we're going to hand out DVDs to congressmen. Oh, yeah, they're going to watch Loose Change, and that's going to change their whole life. And suddenly they're going to be on the House floor declaring that false flag terrorism is a problem. I mean, what reality are people in? We've got to get serious. The country is run by a small group of military contractors right now. They're not really looking to relinquish their power. We need to put the spotlight on them so people get aware of the fact that it's not just blood-drinking globalists. It's guys who sit on corporate boards. It's interlocking corporate board memberships. It's British Petroleum. It's Goldman Sachs. It's J.P. Morgan. It's not just the Federal Reserve. It's the private banks as well,
Agreed. Well, I was going to say we've got a break coming up. John, how long do we have to the break?
We have 46 seconds.
Okay, we got 46 seconds, so I'm going to lead into what I'd like to cover on the other side of the break. I want to take this or direct this towards, obviously, you voiced your opinion that you have a problem with the way, the actual methods that people are using to, quote, be active. So I'm wondering what you feel is a better way, or what direction, or just something about what we can do besides the same old tired things that we've been doing.
Right. So
let's get back to that on the other side of this break. This is PNAC Radio on We the People. We're back on PNAC Radio, We the People Radio Network. John, we still got Dan on the line?
We do.
Okay, let's bring it. Is he back up on the...
He is back.
All right, before the break, I was, for those who just tuned in, I was asking Dan Abramson, Dan, where do you think, well, let me address the caller thing. We've got two callers on the line. We've only got Dan for a few more minutes, so if you could, let's hold until he's off the air, and then we'll get to the calls. I want to know what you think. Obviously, we know what you think is wrong with what people are doing. What do you think, not so much what the issues we should focus on at first, but what are better methods than standing around holding signs and handing out DVDs, do you think?
Listen. I don't think standing and holding signs is a bad idea. In fact, I participated in a freeway blog last Thursday where we held up a sign, 9/11 was a black op, 9/11 was a U.S. military black op. See, I like that. What I'm complaining about is that the memes haven't changed. Inside job is a stale meme. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't tell you who did it. It could have been anybody. Like I said, it could have been an inside job and Larry Silverstein did it to get some insurance money. It could have been an inside job and it was carried out by German intelligence. There were some links between ATA and German intelligence. Maybe they pulled it off. Could have been MI6. Could have been anybody. What I'm saying is we need to get specific. I'm all for street activism. I'm all for freeway blogging. I'm all for handing out DVDs if they're worthwhile, if they put things in a proper context. I feel a lot of the DVDs that are handed out are substandard, are very speculative, in many ways discredit us to the very people we're trying to wake up right now with claims that are outlandish because they sell more videos. And so I'm saying I like a lot of the tactics that are being used. I just think we need to set our guns on the right targets,
Basically, we're just tired.
I'm happy that people are making an effort. People think I'm maligning everyone as a cultist. What I'm saying is the talking points are cult-like. We need to start creating our own talking points. We need to evolve as researchers. We need to say, look, it has been 6 years. Do we want to talk about victims' families, or do we want to talk about the private contractors who could pull this off? One of the most poignant arguments that people make from the left is that they say, you're going to tell me that the same people who bungled the Iraq War could have done 9/11, and that's when you can say to them, no, it's not just, you can say the government is incompetent. Look to the private contractors. Look to the people in future combat systems. That's where you have the operational capability to carry it out outside of any government oversight. So I'm encouraging people to start changing the way we look at false flag terrorism. And furthermore, if I may add this, I've neglected to mention the big point, Russia and China, the fact that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is developing right now. This is Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, the Central Asian states. This is a counterbalance to NATO, and it's not just me saying that. That's the Western media that's finally admitting that. What's happening is that a World War IV scenario is being drawn up by the global elite. We've got to be specific about this. Why is nobody talking about Shanghai Cooperation Organization? These are the major players. I'll tell you why. Because they are so addicted to the hypothesis that one banker group controls the whole system. So China's controlled by the bankers. Russia's controlled by the same bankers. That's a fallacy. Putin is not controlled by the bankers. He kicked Chevron out of the country. He kicked Shell out of the